Okay, John Bolton, he served as National Security Advisor to President Trump in his first term, and he was ambassador to the United Nations for President George W. Bush, and he joins us now. Okay, Ambassador, who is going to blink first here? How does this finish?
Well, it's anybody's guess at this point. I think the United States holds a great advantage here, but it hasn't finished the job that was started. My definition of finishing the job is ousting the regime in Tehran, but there are steps less than that that Trump could take, and I'm a little surprised that he hasn't done it. For example, if he were to use military force to open the Strait of Hormuz, which does not involve going back to the kinds of attacks we saw 3 or 4 weeks ago, if he could do that but keep the blockade on Iranian oil shipments, that would continue to put a huge financial squeeze on Iran, but would get a lot of much-needed oil out of the Gulf and into international markets. I think that is certainly something he can do to up the pressure, keep things moving, and avoid having to make some of the choices he clearly doesn't want to make and shouldn't have to make.
Okay, did you see this report in The Atlantic about Vice President Vance pressing the Pentagon over potentially lowballing the depletion of the munition stocks and pushing that inside the administration? How deep is the deficit here? How concerned are you, or should we be, about the U.S. munitions situation?
Well, I don't think it's an imminent concern, but the big picture is absolutely right. 4 decades, really, 3.5 decades, I'll be specific, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, we have dramatically underspent on defense budgets. And it's come home to roost in a number of ways, one of which is the depletion of our arsenals, both because of aid to Ukraine and the current war, but mostly because our estimates of the rate of expenditure of missiles and ammunition in conflict turned out to be well below what has actually been happening in Ukraine and in the war with Iran. So we need a huge increase in the defense budget. Trump has proposed that for the next fiscal year. We need a lot of things, but mostly we need to get the arsenals back up. I don't think this issue, which is a serious issue in the long term, will or should affect Trump's decision-making in the here and now.
Okay, what about termination? No offense to attorneys, but it sounds kind of like a lawyer's trick, right? When the president says that we've terminated this and so we don't have to do the 60-day thing. One of the reasons I'm guessing that the Pentagon, that we haven't seen a supplemental defense appropriation to get those munition stockpiles back up, is that the administration doesn't want to have this fight in Congress. You have been to these kinds of rodeos before. What is going to happen when Congress comes back? Do you think that the Republican naysayers will say nay, or how do you see the authorization piece playing out when Congress comes back?
I don't see it having any effect. Remember, the War Powers Act was passed in 1973 at probably the weakest point of executive power, certainly in the 20th century, maybe in our history, the depths of Nixon's problems over Watergate. So it's been in effect over 50 years. It has never once stopped a war. I think it's unconstitutional. I think that remains the position of the Justice Department. So I think it's a distraction, frankly. If a majority of Congress does not want this war to continue, it has a perfectly good way of handling it, and that's cutting off appropriations, cutting off funding for the war. And if they want to speak up, that's the way to do it.
Okay, Ambassador, we really appreciate you this Sunday. Have a great day.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.